Two people, same age, 25, same starting budget, $30,000. One walks into a dealership and signs a lease. The other walks into a different dealership and writes a check. 40 years later, one of them is sitting on a portfolio worth over $500,000 in today's purchasing power. The other one has a lease payment due next month, and the gap between them has nothing to do with income, discipline, or luck. It has to do with one habit they both picked up at 25 and never questioned. Meet James. James is the kind of person who takes care of things. He researches every purchase, he reads reviews, and when he walks into a dealership at 25, he does exactly what the salesperson suggests. He leases a $30,000 car for $450 a month. It is a great deal on paper. Low payment, new car smell, full warranty, technology that actually works. And in 3 years, he gets to do it all again with something newer. James loves the system. He stayed in it for 40 years. Now meet Maya. Maya buys the same $30,000 car. She takes out a loan, pays it off in 5 years, and then drives that car for another 10. She is not in love with it. She just does not think about cars the way James does. At 40, she buys a used car for less than $20,000. At 55, she buys another one. She drives each car until it stops being reliable. She is not making a dramatic financial statement. She is just not renewing a habit she never started. Here on Sarah's Money Map, we spend a lot of time asking why money moves the way it does. And this is one of those questions that looks simple on the surface, but underneath it is sitting on a 40-year compounding engine. So let us look at the map behind both timelines, because the numbers tell a story that the dealership will never show you. Let us start with James. Over 40 years, James signs 13 leases. The average payment across those leases is $450 a month. Total paid, $216,000. That is the number that gets written on a very long receipt. And at the end of it, at age 65, James owns nothing. He walks away from every car he ever drove. No trade-in value, no equity, no exit. The cars simply go back. The money simply leaves. This is what I call the renewal trap. Every 3 years, the habit renews automatically. The payment continues. The equity does not accumulate. The clock resets. And because each renewal feels like a fresh start rather than a continuation of a cost, it never feels like a 40-year commitment. But it is. Now let us look at Maya. 3 cars over 40 years. $30,000 for the first, $20,000 for the second, $25,000 for the third. Total spent on vehicles across her entire driving life, $75,000. She also has a car at 65. It is 7 years old, worth maybe $12,000 on a trade-in. Her total net outlay on transportation, roughly $63,000 after that value. Compare that to James's $216,000. The raw gap is $153,000. But that is not the number that changes retirement. The number that changes retirement is what happens when Maya does something James never does. She invests the difference. Not all of it, not even most of it. Every month Maya's car is paid off and James is still writing a lease check. She puts $200 into an index fund. $200. That is the conservative estimate of what Maya saves on average across the phases where her costs are low and his are not. Some months the gap is much wider. When Maya's car is fully paid off, her monthly car cost drops to roughly $150. Just insurance and maintenance. James is paying $450. The gap in that phase is $300. When Maya is actively repaying a loan, the gap narrows. Across 40 years of alternating phases, $200 a month is a reasonable average. Now let us put $200 a month into the market at 7% annual return, adjusted for inflation. That means real purchasing power in today's dollars, not inflated future numbers. After 40 years, that becomes $525,000. That is the number the renewal trap was hiding, not in some future dollar figure inflated by decades of nominal growth. $525,000 in the purchasing power of today. Groceries, rent, healthcare, retirement, all priced in the money you understand right now. I want you to visualize two lines on a graph. Picture them starting at the same point when James and Maya are both 25. Year 1. The lines are almost touching. Both of them are making car payments, roughly the same expense. But around year 6, something shifts. Maya's first loan is paid off. Her car is now essentially free to drive. Her line dips. James's line stays flat at $450. A gap opens. The gap is small at first. But that gap does not stay small. It gets invested, and invested gaps compound. By year 15, Maya has been through one loan payoff cycle and is midway through her second car. Her line rises for a few years when she buys the used car, then dips again when that loan clears. James's line never dips. It stays flat at $450 and sometimes higher as the cars get more expensive. By year 30, the two lines on the graph are visually in different places. Maya's monthly car cost averages out lower across the decade. James's never changes. The investment account tracking Maya's differential is no longer a flat line. It is curving upward. The bar is growing. Every payoff cycle, the bar grows faster. By year 40, the gap between those two lines has quietly built something James cannot see from the dealership lot. Now, here is something important to say before we go any further, because I want this to be honest, not just dramatic. The math above assumes Maya actually invests the difference. If she does not, if he spends the $200 on other things instead, the story ends differently. Leasing math is not what loses James the money. Failing to redirect the difference is what loses Maya the money. The habit that matters is the second habit, investing the gap, not just driving the cheaper car. There is also a legitimate case for leasing. I am not going to ignore it. If you run a business and your vehicle qualifies for a deduction, leasing can be more tax efficient than ownership. If your job relocates you every 2 or 3 years, leasing removes the headache of selling a car in an unfamiliar market. If you drive fewer than 10,000 miles a year and you are extremely particular about reliability and warranty coverage, the math gets closer. And if you are one of the 57% of new EV buyers currently choosing to lease, that is a real consideration. Battery technology is changing fast. You might not want to own a car whose range is outdated in 5 years. Experian data shows more than half of new electric vehicle buyers are leasing right now. For early adopters hedging against technology risk, that calculus makes sense. But here's the condition that the math requires to flip in leasing's favor. You have to be leasing for a specific functional reason. Not because the payment feels manageable. Not because you like new cars. Not because your neighbor does it. When leasing becomes a habit rather than a decision, the renewal trap closes. You renew at the end of every term without running the numbers. The habit runs itself. Most people who lease do not do it for business deductions or EV battery hedging. McKinsey found that more than half of consumers who do not currently lease said they could not explain the process to a friend. That is not a population making a calculated choice. That is a population making a comfortable one. James is in that second group. He is not wrong about the monthly payment. It is manageable. He is wrong about the cost. He is confusing affordable with cheap, and those are not the same thing across 4 decades. So how does Maya end up here? Not because she is more disciplined than James. She is not especially frugal. She takes vacations. She has subscriptions. She buys things she does not need. What she does not do is renew a payment that does not have to exist. Once her first loan is gone, she treats the absence of a car payment as found money and puts it somewhere it can grow. That is the silent investor at work. The silent investor is the version of you that keeps collecting after the obligation ends. Most people let lifestyle fill the gap the moment a payment disappears. Maya does not. She just redirects. Quietly. Automatically. Without drama. Here's the protocol. 3 steps executable this week. Step 1. Calculate your current lease total. Take your monthly payment and multiply it by the number of months remaining across all expected future leases. Write down that lifetime total. For most habitual lessees, it lands somewhere above $150,000. Write it down. Name it. It is not a car budget. It is a 40-year commitment you have not signed in full yet. Step 2. Find your gap. If you bought a reliable used car instead, what would your monthly cost look like once the loan clears? Years 6 through 15, when you owe nothing. Subtract that from your current lease payment. That is your differential. That is the number that turns into compounding. Step 3. Automate the differential. Open a brokerage account today if you do not have one. Set a monthly automatic transfer for whatever the gap is between your lease payment and your projected ownership cost in a payoff phase. You do not have to stop leasing immediately. But if you can model what the differential looks like invested at 7% over 20 or 30 years, the urgency becomes its own motivation. The cars themselves are not the point. James and Maya drove fine cars. Neither of them struggled to get to work. The point is what was happening in the background while the cars were parked in the driveway. In Maya's background, a clock was running in her favor. In James's, the clock was neutral at best. $525,000 in today's money does not sound like it comes from a $200 monthly habit, but it does. It is 9 years of work converted from mandatory to optional. It is the difference between having to say yes to a job you dislike and having the leverage to say no. That is not a car decision. That is a retirement decision dressed up as a car decision. I want to hear from you in the comments. If you are currently leasing, is it a calculated choice or a habit you have not examined recently? Drop your answer below. I read everyone, and the real-world patterns people share help me figure out what to cover next. If this math reframes something for you, hit the like button. It helps Sarah's Money Map reach people who are making 40-year decisions, 1 3-year renewal at a time. I will see you in the next one.